A blood-red sun dipped below the rugged horizon as Nathan Xavier rode his chestnut mare across the barren Montana Territory landscape, the distant howl of wolves breaking the eerie silence of 1875. The bounty hunter had been tracking outlaws for 3 days with nothing to show but dust in his throat and an emptiness that stretched wider than the plains surrounding him. What he found instead would change his life forever. The whimpering sound drew his attention, first faint and broken, like a wounded animal. Nathan pulled on the reins, his weathered hand instinctively moving to the Colt revolver at his side. Following the sound, he dismounted and approached a cluster of boulders. Behind them, curled against the rocky wall, lay a young woman. Her dress was torn, her face bruised and bloodied, her auburn hair matted with dirt and blood. "Miss." Nathan knelt beside her, his voice gentler than most would expect from a man of his profession. "Can you hear me?" She flinched away, raising her hands defensively. Her eyes, deep emerald green, were wide with terror. "I won't hurt you," he said, removing his hat. "I give you my word." The woman trembled, her split lip quivering as she tried to speak. "They'll come back, they always do." Nathan surveyed her injuries with growing rage. Bruises in various stages of healing suggested this wasn't the first time she'd been beaten. "Who did this to you?" "My brothers," she whispered, "and my uncle." Nathan had seen cruelty in many forms during his years on the frontier, but the savagery visited upon one's own kin never ceased to sicken him. Without hesitation, he removed his canteen and offered her water. "What's your name?" he asked as she drank cautiously. Rebecca Vance." "I'm Nathan Xavier." He studied the darkening sky. "Night's coming, we need to get you somewhere safe." When he reached to help her stand, she recoiled again. "Miss Vance, I understand your fear, but I promise you this, no one's going to hurt you again, not while I draw breath." Rebecca studied him with wary eyes before allowing him to help her up. She swayed unsteadily, and Nathan caught her before she collapsed. "You're safe now," he assured her, lifting her carefully into his arms. Her body felt fragile against his chest, like a wounded bird. Her eyes met his, filled with a desperate hope that broke something inside him. Nathan placed her on his horse before mounting behind her. As he secured her with one arm, she whispered, "They'll find me. They always do." "No, they won't," Nathan said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of a vow. He lifted her chin gently, making sure she heard his next words clearly. "You'll never go back there, I promise you that." The town of Redemption Creek lay 3 hours' ride to the north. As they traveled, Rebecca drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally mumbling fragments of prayers or pleas. Nathan felt her shivering against him and wrapped his duster around her slender frame. Darkness had fully descended when they arrived at the town's lone doctor's residence. Doctor Harold Miller was a gruff man in his 60s who had served as a field surgeon during the war. He opened the door with a scowl that quickly transformed to concern when he saw Rebecca's condition. "Good Lord, Xavier, what happened to her?" "Family." Nathan spat the word like it was poison. "Her own kin did this," the doctor cursed under his breath. "Bring her in. Emily," he called to his wife. "Heat water and prepare the examination room." Nathan carried Rebecca to a small room at the back of the house. Mrs. Miller, a kind-faced woman with silver hair, gasped when she saw Rebecca's condition. "You wait outside," Dr. Miller instructed Nathan. "Emily and I will tend to her." Nathan paced the doctor's front room for nearly an hour, his mind racing. Family violence wasn't uncommon in these parts, but something about Rebecca Vance had awakened a protective instinct he thought long buried. Perhaps it was the quiet dignity in her eyes despite her suffering, or the way she'd tried to thank him even through her pain. Doctor Miller finally emerged, wiping his hands on a bloodied cloth. "She's been through hell, Xavier. 3 broken ribs, that arm's been broken and healed wrong at least once before, lacerations, bruises some fresh, some weeks old." He shook his head in disgust. "Who would do this to their own flesh and blood?" "Her brothers and uncle, according to her. Savages," the doctor muttered. "She needs rest, lots of it, and safety." "Can she be moved?" Nathan asked. "Not tonight, maybe tomorrow if she shows improvement." Dr. Miller studied Nathan's face. "You planning to take her somewhere?" away from here, wherever her family can't find her. The doctor nodded slowly. You got a place in mind. The widow Harmon's boarding house in Silverton might take her in. That's nearly 80 miles from here. Exactly, Nathan's voice was steel. Far enough that those animals might not track her, Dr. Miller sighed. She's awake, asking for you. Go on, but keep it brief. She needs rest. Rebecca lay propped against pillows, her face cleaned of blood but still showing the ugly evidence of her ordeal. Her auburn hair had been brushed and braided by Mrs. Miller. She looked younger now, perhaps 20 or 21, with delicate features partially obscured by bruising. Mr. Xavier, she said softly when he entered. Just Nathan is fine, Miss Vance. Then I'm Rebecca. She attempted a smile that turned into a wince. Thank you for finding me. Nathan removed his hat, suddenly aware of his dust-covered appearance. No need for thanks. There is. Her voice strengthened slightly. They would have killed me this time. The calm certainty in her voice made Nathan's blood run cold. What happened? Rebecca's eyes dropped to her bandaged hands. I tried to run 3 times before. This time I thought I'd gotten far enough. A tear slid down her cheek. Uncle Silas said they'd teach me what happens to disobedient women. Nathan clenched his jaw. Where are they now? Hunting me. Our ranch is about 20 miles east of where you found me. She looked up, her eyes filled with terror. They won't stop looking, my brother Ezra. He doesn't let anything go. Why keep you like a prisoner? Rebecca's laugh was hollow. Since my father died 5 years ago, they've had control of the family land. If I marry, my husband would have claim to my portion. They can't allow that. So they beat you to ensure you stay unmarried. Nathan felt sick. She nodded. And they need someone to cook and clean. A woman's place, Uncle Silas says. Nathan had heard similar stories across the frontier, women treated as property, their rights and dreams crushed beneath the boots of men who claimed to protect them. Rebecca, he said gently, tomorrow, when you're stronger, I'd like to take you to a town called Silverton. There's a good woman there who runs a boarding house. You'd be safe. Hope flashed in her eyes before doubt extinguished it. They'd find me eventually. Not if they believe you're dead. The plan was forming in Nathan's mind even as he spoke. I know men who can help spread word that a woman matching your description was found dead near the Wyoming border. Rebecca studied him. Why would you do this for a stranger? It was a fair question. Nathan wasn't known for charity. As a bounty hunter, he tracked men for money, not mercy. I've spent 10 years bringing men to justice, he said finally. But sometimes justice needs a helping hand. What your family's done to you, there's no law that will truly make them pay, but I can make sure they never hurt you again. A silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken understanding. Finally, Rebecca nodded. Thank you. Rest now, Nathan said, moving toward the door. I'll make arrangements. As he turned to leave, her voice stopped him. Nathan, they're dangerous men if they discover your involvement. I've faced worse, he assured her, though something told him that wasn't entirely true. There was something especially vicious about men who would treat their own blood with such cruelty. In the doctor's front room, Nathan wrote a telegram to send to Sheriff Wilson in Silverton, an old acquaintance who owed him a favor. He needed to arrange safe passage and a convincing story about Rebecca's death that would reach her family's ears. You're getting yourself into something complicated, Dr. Miller observed, watching Nathan write. Wouldn't be the first time. This is different. The doctor sat heavily in a chair across from Nathan. I've known you for 7 years? Never seen you involve yourself in something that wasn't business. Nathan continued writing. This is business, the business of doing what's right. The doctor studied him. Just be careful. Men like those brothers don't sound like the type to let matters drop easily. Nathan finished writing and folded the paper. Neither am I. That night, Nathan slept in a chair outside Rebecca's room, his revolver within easy reach. Several times he heard her cry out in her sleep, trapped in nightmares. Each time, Mrs. Miller would go to her, speaking softly until the cries subsided. Morning brought pale sunlight and the sound of horse hooves on the main street. Nathan moved to the window, pushing the curtain aside slightly. 3 riders moved slowly down the street, questioning townspeople. Even from a distance, The family resemblance was clear, all tall men with broad shoulders and red-brown hair like Rebecca's. "They're here," Nathan told Dr. Miller quietly. The doctor cursed. "That was fast. They must have been tracking her already." "Is there a back way out?" "Yes, through my surgery and out the garden, but she's in no condition to ride hard." Nathan considered their options. "We need a diversion, and a different horse they'll recognize mine." Dr. Miller thought for a moment. "Johnson at the livery owes me for setting his leg last winter. And my nephew works at the telegraph office. He could send a false report about a woman matching her description being seen heading toward Copper Ridge." Nathan nodded. "Good, I'll need a wagon too. She can't ride horseback with those ribs." While Dr. Miller went to make arrangements, Nathan returned to Rebecca's room. She was awake, sitting up with effort, her face pale but determined. "They're here, aren't they?" she asked immediately. "I heard voices outside. Your brothers and uncle are in town," Nathan confirmed, seeing no point in lying. "But they won't find you. We're leaving through the back as soon as arrangements are made." Rebecca's hands trembled as she pushed back the blankets. "I need to dress. Mrs. Miller left some clothes for you." Nathan indicated a simple blue dress draped over a chair. "Can you manage?" "I've dressed with worse injuries," she said quietly, and the matter-of-fact way she said it made Nathan's chest tighten with anger. "I'll wait outside. Call if you need help." 20 minutes later, Dr. Miller returned. "Johnson's bringing a covered wagon around back. My nephew sent the telegram about a sighting in Copper Ridge. That should send them in the opposite direction." Mrs. Miller helped Rebecca finish dressing and packed a small bundle of supplies, food, medicine, and a few items of clothing she could spare. When Rebecca emerged from the room, she was pale but standing on her own, the borrowed dress hanging loosely on her thin frame. "You should eat something before we go," Mrs. Miller insisted, guiding Rebecca to a chair, while Rebecca forced down some broth and bread. Nathan and Dr. Miller discussed routes to Silverton. "The main road's too obvious," the doctor said. "Take the old mining trail through Eagle Pass. It's longer but rarely traveled these days." "That trail's rough," Nathan objected. "Hard on someone with broken ribs." "Better rough roads than a meeting with those men." The doctor handed Nathan a small pouch. "Laudanum for the pain. Use it sparingly, just enough to take the edge off." A soft knock at the back door announced Johnson with the wagon. Nathan helped Rebecca to her feet, supporting her as they moved through the doctor's surgery and out into the small garden. The wagon was simple but solid, with a canvas cover providing shelter and concealment. "Thank you both," Rebecca said to the Millers, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how I can ever repay your kindness." Mrs. Miller embraced her gently. "You live a good life, child. That's repayment enough." As Nathan helped Rebecca into the wagon, Dr. Miller pulled him aside. "I've put extra bandages and medicines under the seat. Change her rib bindings daily. Watch for fever, it could mean infection." Nathan nodded, then extended his hand. "I'm obliged to you, Doc." Dr. Miller shook it firmly. "Just get her somewhere safe, Xavier, and watch your back. Those men have the look of killers about them." "So do I," Nathan replied grimly. He climbed onto the wagon seat and took the reins. Rebecca sat beside him, wrapped in blankets despite the morning warmth. She looked small and vulnerable, but there was a quiet determination in her posture. As they started moving, Nathan noticed her looking back at the town, her expression unreadable. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, just saying goodbye to my old life." She turned to face forward. "I never thought I'd get away, not alive anyway." "Well, as far as anyone will know, you didn't," Nathan said. "By this time tomorrow, rumors of your death will have reached your family. They won't believe it without proof. Sheriff Wilson in Silverton will handle that. He's got connections with the Territorial Marshal's office. They'll make it official. Unidentified female body found, suspected to be the missing Vance girl." Rebecca was silent for a long moment. "It's strange to think of myself as dead." "Not dead," Nathan corrected. "Reborn, you get to start over." The ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Reborn. I like that." They traveled slowly through the back streets of Redemption Creek, avoiding the main thoroughfare where Rebecca's kin were searching. Once clear of town, Nathan turned the wagon onto a narrow trail that wound into the foothills. He kept glancing behind them, watching for pursuit, but the road remained empty. By midday, the rough trail had taken its toll on Rebecca. Her face was drawn with pain, her breathing shallow to avoid jarring her ribs. "We should stop," Nathan said, noting her condition. "You need rest." "No," she insisted. "The farther we get, the better. You won't do yourself any favors by suffering needlessly." He pulled the wagon into a sheltered grove beside a small stream. Half an hour, enough to stretch and take some medicine. Rebecca didn't argue, which told Nathan how much pain she must be in. He helped her down from the wagon, supporting her weight as she straightened her legs. "Sit here," he said, guiding her to a flat rock in the shade. He retrieved the medicine pouch and a canteen. "Doctor Miller said a few drops of this would help with the pain." Rebecca accepted the laudanum reluctantly. "I don't like how it makes my head feel, like I'm floating and sinking at the same time." "Just enough to take the edge off," Nathan promised. "We've got rough country ahead." While Rebecca rested, Nathan refilled their canteens and checked the wagon. The horses needed rest too, but they couldn't afford to linger. Nathan had no illusions about the men pursuing them. They would be relentless. "Tell me about Silverton," Rebecca said when he returned to her side. "What's it like?" "Small, quieter than most mining towns, started as a silver camp but evolved into a proper settlement. Widow Harmon's boarding house is on the edge of town, clean, respectable place for women working as teachers or seamstresses. Do you think she'll take me in?" "I have no money, no references. Sarah Harmon's a good woman, lost her husband and son in the war. She makes it her business to help women in difficult circumstances." Nathan sat beside her. "Besides, you won't be without means for long. You're educated," Rebecca nodded. "My mother insisted. Before she died, she taught me reading, figures, proper writing, said a woman needs her own mind, especially out here." "Sounds like a wise woman." "She was." A shadow crossed Rebecca's face. "Father changed after she passed, grew harder. Then when he died, my brothers took that hardness and turned it into something cruel." Nathan heard the pain beneath her words. "How long had the beatings been going on?" "Since I turned 18, 3 years now." She looked down at her hands. "At first it was just Ezra." A slap for talking back, a shove for being too slow with supper. Then William joined in. "Uncle Silas was always the worst though, said he was teaching me my place." Nathan's jaw tightened. In his years as a bounty hunter, he'd brought in men who'd committed all manner of crimes, but few things angered him like those who used their strength against those weaker than themselves. "Did no one in town suspect? Neighbors? Our ranch is isolated." And the few times someone asked about bruises, Uncle Silas would say I was clumsy, fell down the stairs, spooked a horse. She gave a bitter laugh. "After a while I stopped going to town at all. They wouldn't allow it." Nathan wanted to ask more, to understand the full extent of what she'd endured, but he recognized the strain in her face. "We should get moving. Feel up to it," Rebecca nodded, allowing him to help her back to the wagon. As they continued their journey, the trail grew steeper, winding through pine forests and rocky outcroppings. The going was slow, each bump and jolt causing Rebecca to grip the seat tightly, though she never complained. By late afternoon, they had climbed high enough to look back over the valley they'd left behind. Nathan stopped the wagon at a viewpoint, allowing Rebecca to see how far they'd come. "That's Redemption Creek," he said, pointing to a distant cluster of buildings. "And beyond it, the plains where your family's ranch must be." Rebecca stared silently at the landscape, the setting sun casting long shadows across the valley. "It looks so small from here," she finally said. "My whole life reduced to a speck in the distance." "That's the beauty of the West," Nathan replied. "Room to leave the past behind." They made camp that night in a protected hollow. Nathan built a small, smokeless fire and prepared a simple meal of beans and salt pork from their provisions. Rebecca ate little but seemed stronger than she had that morning. "How did you become a bounty hunter?" she asked as they sat by the fire. Nathan poked at the embers. "Started after the war. I'd learned to track deserters as a cavalry scout, seemed a natural transition." "Were you at Gettysburg?" "My father spoke of it. Antietam, Shiloh, wilderness campaign, Nathan's voice grew distant. Saw things no man should see. Rebecca studied him in the firelight, and after, no family waiting, had a wife, Sarah, she died of fever while I was fighting. His words were clipped, the old pain still raw. Came west afterward looking for something, never quite found it. I'm sorry, Rebecca said softly, about your wife. Nathan nodded his acknowledgement. It was a long time ago. Does it ever stop hurting? Loss, I mean. Nathan considered her question. Not stop, changes, becomes part of you rather than something that consumes you. He looked at her across the fire. You lost more than most. Parents, home, safety. I lost those things in pieces, she said. Mother first, then father's love, then any sense of family when the beating started. Her voice strengthened. But I'm finding pieces of myself now, too, the woman I was meant to be before they tried to break me. Her resilience impressed Nathan. Most would be shattered by what she'd endured, yet here she sat, determined to forge a new path. You should rest, he said, noticing her eyelids growing heavy. I've made a bed for you in the wagon. Rebecca didn't argue, allowing him to help her into the wagon where he'd arranged blankets into a makeshift bed. As he turned to leave, she caught his hand. Nathan, she said quietly, thank you for seeing me, truly seeing me when everyone else looked away. Her words followed him as he returned to the fire. He hadn't set out to be anyone's savior. Yet somehow, in the act of helping Rebecca escape her tormentors, he'd stumbled into something that felt like purpose, something he hadn't felt since the war ended. Nathan kept watch most of the night, dozing only in short intervals. Shortly before dawn, he was startled fully awake by the distant sound of horses. Moving quickly, he doused the remnants of their fire and climbed a nearby rock formation for a better view. In the pre-dawn light, he could make out 3 riders on the trail below, moving slowly but deliberately. Even at this distance, he recognized the builds of the men he'd seen in Redemption Creek, Rebecca's brothers and uncle. They had not been fooled by the false telegram after all. Nathan returned to camp and roused Rebecca gently. We need to move. Your family's on our trail. Fear flashed in her eyes, but she nodded, gathering herself quickly. Within minutes, they had the wagon ready and were moving again, taking a game trail that branched off from the main path. How did they find us? Rebecca whispered as they traveled, glancing nervously behind them. Probably talked to someone who saw us leaving town, Nathan replied, or they're just covering all possible routes. He urged the horses faster. We need to reach Eagle Pass by midday. Once through, we'll be harder to track. The narrow game trail was treacherous for the wagon, forcing them to move slower than Nathan would have liked. By mid-morning, they reached a steep section where the trail wound around a cliff face. Nathan halted the wagon and surveyed the path ahead. This is too risky for the wagon, he decided. We'll have to go on horseback from here. Rebecca looked at the steep trail with apprehension. With my ribs. I know it'll be painful, Nathan said gently, but we don't have a choice. I'll ride with you, keep you steady. He unhitched one of the wagon horses and secured their essential supplies to its back. Then he helped Rebecca mount, wincing at her sharp intake of breath as he lifted her. Once she was settled, he climbed up behind her, one arm securely around her waist. Lean back against me, he instructed. I won't let you fall. Rebecca did as he said, her body tense with pain and fear. Nathan could feel the heat of her through his shirt, smell the faint lavender scent Mrs. Miller's soap had left in her hair. The intimacy of their position wasn't lost on him, but practical necessity overrode any discomfort. They left the wagon and continued on the narrow trail. Progress was slow but steady, each step taking them higher into the mountains. The day grew warm, and Nathan felt Rebecca's strength flagging. Not much farther to the pass, he encouraged her. Then we'll rest. They reached Eagle Pass shortly after noon, a narrow gap between towering rock walls that opened to a view of the valley beyond. Nathan helped Rebecca dismount in the shadow of the rocks, easing her down to sit with her back against a boulder. We made it, she said weakly, managing a smile despite her exhaustion. Half the journey, Nathan corrected, giving her water, but we've bought ourselves time. The wagon will slow them down at that steep section. Rebecca sipped the water, her hands trembling slightly. What if they abandon it too, follow on horseback? Then we'll deal with that when it comes. Nathan checked their supplies. Rest now. Once we're through the pass, the trail improves. We can make better time. He used the respite to scout ahead, climbing to a vantage point that allowed him to see the trail they'd traveled. In the distance, he could make out dust rising, riders moving fast. Too fast. They must have abandoned the idea of bringing a wagon and were coming on horseback. When Nathan returned to Rebecca, she read the concern on his face. They're coming, aren't they? Yes, we need to move. Rebecca struggled to her feet, determination overriding her pain. Then let's not waste time. They continued through the pass, emerging into a forested valley. The trail here was better maintained, allowing them to increase their pace. Rebecca remained silent, though Nathan could feel her tense with pain at each jarring step. By late afternoon, they had descended enough to reach a small trading post nestled in the valley. It was little more than a cabin with a stable, run by an aging trapper named Jenkins who traded with travelers and local tribes. Jenkins emerged from the cabin as they approached, a shotgun held casually in the crook of his arm. His white beard reached his chest, and his leathery face had seen decades of mountain weather. "Xavier," he greeted gruffly when he recognized Nathan. "Been some years, Jenkins." Nathan dismounted, then helped Rebecca down. "We need shelter, and fresh horses if you have them." The old man's eyes took in Rebecca's bruised face and the protective way Nathan kept his arm around her. "Trouble following, 3 men, likely armed, about 2 hours behind us." Jenkins nodded toward the cabin. "Get her inside, we'll talk." The cabin's interior was surprisingly clean and organized, with furs on the walls and a pot of stew simmering over the fire. Jenkins directed Rebecca to a chair and poured her a cup of strong coffee laced with something from a small flask. "Whiskey and honey," he explained. "Good for what ails you." While Rebecca sipped the brew, Nathan explained their situation in low tones. The old trapper listened without interruption, his weathered face revealing nothing. "So they're hunting her," Jenkins said when Nathan finished. "Their own kin." "They see her as property," Nathan replied. "One that's trying to escape their control." Jenkins spat into the fire. "Knew men like that in my time, no better than the slavers before the war." He studied Rebecca for a moment. "You got a plan beyond running, Silverton," Nathan said. "She can start fresh there." The old man nodded slowly. "It's still 2 days' ride, even with fresh horses." He moved to the window, peering out at the gathering dusk. "Those men will reach here by nightfall." Rebecca looked up sharply. "Then we should go now." "No," Jenkins said firmly. "Nightfall in these mountains is a death sentence for those who don't know the way. Besides, I've got a better idea." He outlined his plan quickly. Nathan would take Rebecca through a hidden trail that led north towards Silverton, while Jenkins would misdirect her pursuers, sending them west toward a mining settlement called Prosperity. "I'll tell them I saw a man and woman head that way this morning," Jenkins said. "By the time they realize the deception, you'll have a full day's lead." Nathan considered the plan. "They might not believe you." "Then I'll make them believe me," Jenkins replied, patting his shotgun. "I've dealt with worse than 3 angry ranchers." Rebecca looked troubled. "I don't want to put you in danger on my account," the old trapper snorted. "Miss, I've been putting myself in danger for 80 years. Few more hours won't matter much." While they ate a hurried meal, Jenkins prepared supplies and saddled 2 of his strongest horses. The old man moved with surprising agility for his age, gathering provisions and ammunition with practiced efficiency. "These mountains have eyes," he told Nathan as they loaded the horses. "Ute hunting parties pass through regular. They know me, trade with me. If those men harm me, the Ute will hunt them down without mercy." "Still, be careful," Nathan warned. "These aren't ordinary men. There's something wrong in them to treat their own blood as they've treated Rebecca." Jenkins handed Nathan a worn but well-maintained Henry rifle. "Extra protection. The trail I'm sending you on crosses Blackfoot territory. They're mostly peaceful now, but best to be prepared." As darkness fell, they made final preparations to leave. Rebecca had rested enough to regain some color in her cheeks, though she still moved gingerly to protect her ribs. Jenkins gave her a small leather pouch. "Healing herbs from the Ute medicine woman. Make a tea with it morning and night, help with the pain and prevent fever." "Thank you," Rebecca said, genuinely moved by the old man's kindness. "I wish there was some way to repay you." "Live well," Jenkins replied simply. "That's payment enough for an old man who's seen too much suffering." They mounted in the darkness, following Jenkins to the edge of a nearly invisible trail that vanished into the dense forest. "Follow this north for about 5 miles," he instructed. "It'll join a creek. Follow the creek upstream until dawn, then look for 3 tall pines growing together. Turn east there and you'll reach the old mission by tomorrow night. The priest there can guide you the rest of the way to Silverton." Nathan reached down to clasp the old man's hand. "I'm in your debt, Jenkins. No debt between friends," the trapper replied. "Now go before those devils arrive." They rode into the darkness, the dense forest swallowing them immediately. The trail was narrow but clear enough for someone with Nathan's tracking skills. Rebecca rode her own horse now, sitting as straight as her injuries allowed, determined not to slow their progress. For hours they traveled in near silence, the only sounds the soft footfalls of their horses and the occasional night bird. The dense canopy above them blocked most of the moonlight, forcing them to trust the horses' sure footing. Near midnight, they stopped briefly to rest the horses and check Rebecca's bandages. She was exhausted but refused to complain, taking only a small sip of laudanum when Nathan insisted. "You're stronger than most men I've known," Nathan told her as he helped her remount. "Not strong," she replied quietly. "Just stubborn. My mother always said it would either save me or be the death of me. Looks like it's saving you so far." They reached the creek Jenkins had mentioned just before dawn, the sound of running water guiding them through the last hour of darkness. As gray light filtered through the trees, they followed the creek upstream, scanning the banks for the landmark Jenkins had described. The sun had fully risen when they found the 3 pines growing from a single base, an unusual formation that was impossible to miss. Nathan turned their course eastward as instructed, leading them through increasingly rocky terrain. By midday, they had climbed enough to look back over the valley. In the far distance, smoke rose from what must be Jenkins' cabin. "Do you think they believed him?" Rebecca asked, watching the smoke. "Jenkins is convincing when he needs to be," Nathan replied, though he shared her concern. "Come on, we should reach the mission by nightfall if we keep moving." The day grew warmer as they traveled, the forest gradually thinning as they moved into more arid country. Rebecca grew quieter, conserving her strength, but Nathan noticed her sitting straighter in the saddle, her eyes taking in the landscape with growing interest rather than fear. Late in the afternoon, they crested a ridge and saw the mission in the valley below a small stone church with several outbuildings surrounded by cultivated fields. Even from a distance, they could see people working the land. "St. Francis Mission," Nathan explained. "Run by Father Thomas Riley. Irish priest who came west 20 years ago to minister to both settlers and natives." "Will he help us?" Rebecca asked. "Father Thomas helps anyone in need. It's his calling." Nathan adjusted his hat against the setting sun. "Besides, he and I have history. He patched me up once after a particularly difficult bounty went wrong." They descended toward the mission, following a well-worn path. As they approached, a bell began to toll, calling the mission's inhabitants to evening prayers. Several people noticed their approach, a mix of white settlers and native converts who lived and worked at the mission. Father Thomas himself came out to meet them, a tall man with iron-gray hair and the weathered face of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. Despite his 60-some years, he moved with the vigor of a much younger man. "Nathan Xavier," he called, his Irish accent still strong after decades in America. "It's been years, my friend." "Father Thomas." Nathan dismounted and clasped the priest's hand. "We're in need of sanctuary." The priest's keen eyes took in Rebecca's condition and Nathan's vigilant posture. "Then you shall have it. All who seek peace are welcome here." He helped Rebecca dismount, noting her wince of pain with concern. "Your injured child. She's been badly beaten," Nathan explained quietly. "By her own family, they're pursuing us." Understanding dawned in the priest's eyes. "Come inside. You'll be safe here while we tend to her wounds." The mission's main building was cool and quiet after the heat of the day. Father Thomas led them to a small room off the central courtyard where a Native American woman was grinding herbs in a stone mortar. "Martha, we have need of your healing skills," the priest said. The woman, who Nathan guessed was in her 50s, looked up and immediately assessed Rebecca's condition with practiced eyes. She spoke quietly to Father Thomas in a language Nathan didn't recognize. "Martha says you should rest now," the priest translated. "She will bring medicine and food." While Martha tended to Rebecca, Father Thomas took Nathan to his study, a small room lined with books and maps. He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "Irish whiskey," he explained. "A gift from my brother in Dublin. I save it for significant occasions." Nathan accepted the glass. "What makes this occasion significant?" the priest smiled knowingly. "In 10 years of our acquaintance, Nathan Xavier, I have never seen you bring anyone to my door. You hunt alone, you travel alone, you face danger alone. Yet here you are, risking your life to protect this young woman." Nathan stared into his glass. It was the right thing to do, indeed it was, but there is right thing to do, and then there is the right thing that captures our hearts in the process. Father Thomas sipped his whiskey. "I see how you look at her. She's injured and vulnerable," Nathan said firmly. "I'm helping her reach safety, nothing more, if you say so." The priest didn't press further. "Now tell me what happened and what you need from me." Nathan explained Rebecca's situation in detail, including Jenkins' assistance and their plan to reach Silverton. Father Thomas listened attentively, occasionally making notes. "Silverton is still a day and a half's ride," he said when Nathan finished. "And these men pursuing you, they sound dangerous and determined." "They are. That's why we need to leave at first light." Father Thomas tapped his fingers thoughtfully on his desk. "I have a better idea. Tomorrow, one of our supply wagons leaves for Silverton with 3 of my brothers as escort. You and Miss Vance could travel with them, safety in numbers. Won't that slow us down? Perhaps by a few hours. But consider the advantage armed escorts who know every trail and shortcut, plus the appearance of a routine supply mission rather than 2 fugitives on horseback." Nathan considered the logic. "You make a good point. Rest tonight. Eat well. Let Martha's medicines work on Miss Vance's injuries. Tomorrow you can decide whether to go with the wagon or continue alone." After dinner in the mission's common room, Nathan checked on Rebecca. Martha had rebandaged her ribs and applied poultices to her worst bruises. She was sitting up in bed, looking more comfortable than she had since he'd found her. "Father Thomas offered to let us travel with their supply wagon tomorrow," Nathan told her. "It might be safer, though slightly slower." Rebecca considered this. "Do you think my family could have reached this far already?" "Not likely. Even if they saw through Jenkins' deception immediately, they'd be at least half a day behind us. Then perhaps the wagon is wise." She adjusted her position carefully. "Martha says my ribs need more rest before another day of hard riding." Nathan nodded. "The wagon it is." He turned to leave, but Rebecca called him back. "Nathan, would you stay a while? I don't want to be alone with my thoughts right now." He pulled a chair beside her bed. "Of course." "Tell me about Silverton," she requested. "What will life be like there?" Nathan described the town in detail, the main street with its boardwalks and hitching posts, the church with its white steeple, the school where children of miners and merchants studied together. He told her about Widow Harmon's boarding house with its neat curtains and flower boxes. "And what will you do?" Rebecca asked. "After you've delivered me safely," the question caught Nathan off guard. He hadn't thought beyond reaching Silverton. "I suppose I'll go back to hunting bounties." "It's what I do." Rebecca studied his face. "Is it what you want to do forever?" "It's what I'm good at," he replied, evading the deeper question. "That's not the same thing." Her green eyes held his. "Don't you ever want something more, a home, perhaps, a place to belong?" Nathan shifted uncomfortably. "I had that once. It didn't last. Because of the war, because your wife died." Rebecca's voice was gentle. "But the war's been over for 10 years, Nathan. How long will you punish yourself by refusing to live?" Her perception startled him. No one had spoken to him so directly about his self-imposed isolation since. Well, since Sarah had been alive. "It's not punishment," he said finally. It's just easier this way. No attachments means no loss. No joy either, Rebecca replied softly. No purpose beyond the next job, the next town. They sat in silence for a moment, the truth of her words hanging between them. Get some rest, Nathan said eventually. We have a long journey tomorrow. As he reached the door, Rebecca spoke again. Nathan, thank you for telling me about Silverton. It sounds like a place where I could build a life. Her words followed him as he walked to his own quarters, a small cell furnished with a narrow bed and washstand. A place where I could build a life. The simplicity of her hope affected him deeply. After all she'd endured, Rebecca still believed in possibilities, in futures worth creating. Nathan removed his boots and stretched out on the bed, too tired to undress fully. As sleep began to claim him, he realized that somewhere in the days since finding Rebecca beaten and broken by the roadside, something had shifted inside him. The familiar emptiness that had been his companion for years had begun to fill with something he hesitated to name. Morning brought clear skies and busy activity as the mission prepared the supply wagon for its journey. 3 brothers in simple brown robes supervised the loading of flour, sugar, coffee, and medical supplies bound for Silverton. Father Thomas introduced Nathan and Rebecca to Brother Michael, a barrel-chested former blacksmith who would lead the expedition. We normally make the journey in 2 days, Brother Michael explained. Camping overnight at Stillwater Creek, we should reach Silverton by tomorrow evening. The wagon was sturdy and well-maintained, with a canvas cover providing shade for passengers. Martha had prepared a pallet in the back where Rebecca could lie comfortably during the rougher stretches of road. As they prepared to depart, Father Thomas took Nathan aside. I've written to Sarah Harmon in Silverton, explaining Miss Vance's situation. She'll be expecting you. Thank you, Nathan said, genuinely grateful. The priest handed him a sealed letter. Give her this as well. It will help smooth Miss Vance's transition. Nathan tucked the letter into his jacket. Father, I can't thank you enough for your help. No thanks needed, but perhaps a bit of advice. The priest's eyes were kind but serious. The young woman you're protecting has known nothing but cruelty from men who should have loved her. Whatever feelings may be developing between you, tread carefully. Nathan started to object, but Father Thomas raised a hand. I see more than you think, my friend. Just remember her heart has been battered as badly as her body. It will need time to heal. Before Nathan could respond, Brother Michael called that they were ready to depart. Nathan joined Rebecca at the wagon, helping her climb carefully onto the seat beside Brother Matthew, a younger monk who would drive the first leg of the journey. Ready? Nathan asked her. Rebecca nodded, her face set with determination. More than ready. The mission bell tolled as they pulled away, Father Thomas and the others waving from the gate. Nathan rode alongside the wagon, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. The 3 brothers were armed with rifles unusual for men of the cloth, but necessary in territory still prone to bandit attacks and occasional hostile native raids. The road to Silverton followed a river valley for the first several miles, the terrain relatively easy. Rebecca seemed to enjoy the journey, asking Brother Matthew questions about the mission's history and work. Her natural curiosity and intelligence impressed Nathan, who found himself watching her more often than was strictly necessary for her protection. By midday, they stopped to rest the horses and eat a simple meal of bread, cheese, and dried fruit provided by the mission. Rebecca sat on a fallen log beside the river, looking more relaxed than Nathan had seen her since they met. How are your ribs? He asked, joining her. Still painful, but Martha's medicine helps. She offered a small smile. And each mile between us and my family eases a different kind of pain. Nathan nodded his understanding. Brother Michael says we're making good time, should reach Stillwater Creek well before dark. And tomorrow, Silverton? Rebecca looked down at her hands. A new life. Does that frighten you? Nathan asked, noticing her pensive expression. Yes, she admitted, but not as much as the old one did. She looked up at him. What will happen when we reach Silverton? Will you stay at all? The question caught Nathan off guard. I hadn't planned to, he said honestly. Once you're settled with the widow Harmon, my job is done. Something flickered in Rebecca's eyes, disappointment perhaps before she composed her features. Of course, you have your own life to return to. Before Nathan could respond, Brother Michael called that it was time to continue their journey. As they resumed their places, Nathan found himself troubled by the exchange. The truth was, he hadn't considered what would happen after reaching Silverton because he hadn't allowed himself to think beyond keeping Rebecca safe. The afternoon brought rougher terrain as they left the river valley and climbed into more forested country. Rebecca moved to the pallet in the wagon bed, the jolting of the wheels too painful for her injured ribs. Nathan rode close by, occasionally catching her eye through the canvas opening. Late in the day, as the sun began to set, they reached Stillwater Creek, a popular camping spot with a wide, shallow stream and plenty of level ground for wagons. Several other travelers had already established camp, including a family heading west in a covered wagon and 2 fur trappers with their season's haul. Brother Michael selected a spot slightly apart from the others, positioning their wagon to provide some privacy. While the brothers set up camp with practiced efficiency, Nathan helped Rebecca from the wagon, supporting her as she stretched her legs. "Are you managing all right?" he asked, concerned by the pallor of her face. "Just tired," she assured him, "and sore from the journey." They shared a simple supper with the brothers, the conversation mostly focused on conditions in Silverton and news from the surrounding territory. As darkness fell, Brother Michael mentioned something that caught Nathan's attention. "There's talk of 3 men causing trouble in Prosperity," the monk said. "Roughed up some locals, asking about a man and woman traveling together." Nathan and Rebecca exchanged glances. "When was this?" Nathan asked, keeping his voice casual. "Yesterday, according to the trappers we spoke with earlier, said these men seemed desperate, offering money for information." Rebecca's hands trembled slightly as she set down her tin cup. "Did the trappers say what these men looked like?" Brother Michael shrugged. "Big fellows, from what I gathered, one with a scar down his cheek." "That's Uncle Sela's," Rebecca whispered to Nathan. "Jenkins' plan worked. They went to Prosperity first, but they'll realize their mistake eventually," Nathan replied quietly. "We need to reach Silverton as soon as possible." After supper, the brothers retired to pray before sleeping, giving Nathan and Rebecca a moment of privacy by the fire. The sounds of the creek and night insects created a peaceful backdrop that belied their continuing danger. "We're close now," Nathan assured her. "By this time tomorrow, you'll be safe in Silverton." Rebecca nodded, staring into the flames. "And you'll be gone." The simple statement hung between them. Nathan found himself struggling for a response that wouldn't feel like a lie. "Rebecca, I'm not." He began, then stopped, unsure how to continue. "Not the staying kind," she finished for him. "I understand, you've already done more for me than anyone in my life." She looked up at him, firelight reflecting in her eyes. "I just want you to know that I'll never forget what you've done. Never." Nathan moved closer, taking her hand tentatively. "Listen to me. You deserve a chance at a real-life peace, safety, maybe someday a family of your own. I'm not that man, Rebecca. I've been alone too long, seen too much." "Is that what you truly believe?" she asked softly. "Or is it just what you tell yourself to avoid risking your heart again?" Before he could answer, Brother Matthew approached, unaware of the moment he'd interrupted. "Brother Michael suggests we all get some rest. We'll start early tomorrow to reach Silverton before dark." Rebecca withdrew her hand from Nathan's and stood carefully. "Thank you, brother. Good night, Nathan." She walked slowly to the wagon where a private sleeping area had been arranged for her, leaving Nathan alone with thoughts he'd been avoiding since they began this journey. The night passed without incident, though Nathan slept lightly, waking at every unusual sound. They broke camp at first light, eager to cover as much ground as possible before the day's heat set in. Rebecca seemed withdrawn that morning, responding politely to the brothers' conversation but avoiding Nathan's gaze. He understood her distance. He'd failed to give her the reassurance she needed, trapped between his growing feelings and his long-established solitude. The road to Silverton grew steeper as they entered mountain country, the wagon moving slowly up winding switchbacks. By midday, they had reached the highest point of their journey, a pass that offered spectacular views of the valley below and the town of Silverton nestled among the foothills in the distance. "There it is," Brother Michael pointed. "We should reach it by sundown." Rebecca stood carefully beside the wagon, shading her eyes to look at her future home. "It's beautiful," she said, and Nathan heard the hope in her voice. The descent was faster but required careful handling of the wagon. Nathan rode ahead at times, scouting the trail and watching for any sign of pursuit. Though they had seen no evidence of Rebecca's family, he couldn't shake the feeling that danger still followed them. Late afternoon brought them to the outskirts of Silverton. The town was larger than Redemption Creek, with substantial buildings of brick and stone alongside the usual wooden structures. The silver mines that gave the town its name and prosperity were visible on the surrounding hillsides. Brother Michael directed the wagon toward the center of town, where the mission maintained a small storehouse for supplies. As they traveled down the main street, Nathan noticed Rebecca taking in every detail: the general store with its colorful window display, the schoolhouse where children were just being dismissed for the day, women in neat dresses carrying parcels from shops. It seemed so normal, she said quietly to Nathan, who had brought his horse alongside the wagon. "Peaceful." "It is," he assured her. "Sheriff Wilson runs a tight town, no troublemakers allowed." They reached the mission storehouse, where several locals greeted the brothers warmly. While the monks began unloading supplies, Nathan helped Rebecca down from the wagon. "Widow Harmon's boarding house is at the end of Maple Street," he told her. "We should go there now, get you settled." Rebecca nodded, clutching the small bundle of belongings Mrs. Miller and Martha had provided. "I'm ready." Nathan thanked the brothers for their protection and guidance, promising to visit the storehouse later with news of their safe arrival at the boarding house. Then he and Rebecca began walking down Maple Street, his hand supportively under her elbow. The Widow Harmon's establishment stood on a corner lot, a two-story white house with green shutters and a wide porch adorned with rocking chairs and flower boxes. It looked exactly as Nathan had described it: respectable, welcoming, safe. As they approached the gate, the front door opened, and Sarah Harmon herself emerged, a dignified woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore a simple gray dress with a white apron, and her expression was one of practiced assessment as she watched them approach. "Mrs. Harmon," Nathan greeted her, removing his hat. "I'm Nathan Xavier. Father Thomas sent word about us." Recognition dawned in her eyes. "Yes, Mr. Xavier. I received Father's message yesterday." Her gaze shifted to Rebecca, softening as she took in the young woman's bruised face and careful movements. "And you must be Miss Vance." "Yes, madam," Rebecca replied, suddenly self-conscious about her appearance. "Well, don't stand there in the street," Mrs. Harmon said briskly. "Come inside where it's cool. You look like you could use some refreshment after your journey." The interior of the boarding house was immaculate, with polished floors and simple but elegant furnishings. Mrs. Harmon led them to a small parlor and excused herself to bring tea. When she returned, she carried not only a tea tray but also a basin of warm water and clean cloths. "Father Thomas explained your situation, Miss Vance," she said as she poured tea. "I want you to know that you're safe here. No one enters my house without my permission, and Sheriff Wilson is a personal friend." "Thank you," Rebecca said, genuine gratitude in her voice. "I don't know how I can repay your kindness." "We'll discuss that once you're recovered," Mrs. Harmon replied practically. "For now, let's see to your immediate needs: a bath, a proper meal, and rest." Nathan handed the woman Father Thomas's letter. "The father asked me to give you this." Mrs. Harmon read it quickly, nodding to herself. "Just as I suspected, Father says you have education, Miss Vance. Once you're well, there might be a position at the school. They're always in need of teaching assistants." Hope brightened Rebecca's face. "I would like that very much." "Good. Now, Mr. Xavier, if you'll excuse us, I'd like to get Miss Vance settled in her room." "You're welcome to wait here, or perhaps you'd like to see Sheriff Wilson. I believe he'd want to know about the men who might be following you." Nathan stood, recognizing the dismissal. "Yes, I should speak with Wilson. I'll return later if that's acceptable." of course. Supper is at 6, Mrs. Harmon replied. You're welcome to join us. As Nathan left the boarding house, he glanced back to see Mrs. Harmon already helping Rebecca up the stairs, speaking to her in motherly tones that seemed to ease some of the tension from the younger woman's shoulders. For the first time since finding her beaten by the roadside, Nathan felt that Rebecca was truly safe. Sheriff Wilson's office was at the opposite end of the main street from the boarding house. The lawman was behind his desk when Nathan entered a tall, lean man with a salt and pepper mustache and the watchful eyes of someone who had seen his share of trouble. Xavier, he greeted, standing to shake Nathan's hand. Been a few years. Heard you were bringing a young lady in need of protection. Word travels fast, Nathan observed. Small town, Wilson shrugged. Widow Harmon mentioned it when she got Father Thomas's letter, said the girl was running from abusive family. Nathan took a seat across from the sheriff and explained Rebecca's situation in detail, including their journey and the pursuit by her brothers and uncle. Wilson listened carefully, making occasional notes. I know the type, he said when Nathan finished. Men who treat women like property, especially family, they'll come looking eventually. Can you help keep her safe? Nathan asked. Of course, I'll put the word out to watch for strangers matching their description. Wilson studied Nathan's face. But that's not all you came to ask, is it? Nathan hesitated, then decided on directness. I need your help with something else. Rebecca needs to disappear completely. As long as her family believes she's alive, they'll keep searching. Understanding dawned in Wilson's eyes. You want to make her death official? Yes. A body found, identified as Rebecca Vance, buried in an unmarked grave. Something her family will believe when they hear it. The sheriff considered this. It could work. I have contacts in the territorial government who can create the necessary documentation. But it would mean Rebecca Vance ceases to exist, legally speaking. She'd need a new identity. She's already starting a new life, Nathan pointed out. A new name would complete the transition. I'll see what I can arrange, Wilson promised. Give me a few days to make the proper contacts. As Nathan stood to leave, the sheriff asked the question Nathan had been avoiding. And what about you, Xavier? Where do you fit in this young woman's new life? I don't, Nathan replied, more sharply than he intended. My job was to get her to safety. I've done that. Wilson's expression remained neutral. If you say so. He extended his hand. Stop by tomorrow. I'll have more information about those legal matters. Nathan left the sheriff's office feeling unsettled. Everyone seemed to see something in his interactions with Rebecca that he wasn't ready to acknowledge, some connection deeper than the protector and protected. He walked the streets of Silverton for nearly an hour, reacquainting himself with the town and clearing his head. By the time he returned to the boarding house, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the neat garden. Mrs. Harmon answered his knock, ushering him into the dining room where several women were already seated around a large table. Rebecca was among them, freshly bathed and wearing a simple blue dress that Mrs. Harmon must have provided. Her hair was neatly brushed and tied back with a ribbon, and though her face still bore the marks of her ordeal, she looked transformed from the frightened, broken woman he'd found by the roadside. Mr. Xavier, she greeted him, a warm smile lighting her eyes. Mrs. Harmon said you might join us for supper. Nathan removed his hat, suddenly conscious of his travel-worn appearance among the neatly dressed women. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, Mrs. Harmon assured him, directing him to a seat opposite Rebecca. Any friend of Father Thomas is welcome at my table. The meal was simple but delicious: roast chicken, vegetables from Mrs. Harmon's garden, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. The conversation flowed easily among the boarding house residents, most of whom were indeed teachers, seamstresses, or clerks, as Nathan had described to Rebecca. Throughout the meal, Nathan found his gaze repeatedly drawn to Rebecca. She spoke little, but he noticed how attentively she listened to the other women, how she seemed to absorb every detail of this normal, peaceful life that had been denied her for so long. After supper, Mrs. Harmon suggested that Rebecca retire early to rest. As she rose from the table, Rebecca glanced at Nathan. Would you walk with me to the porch first? I'd like some fresh air before bed. Nathan followed her outside, where the evening air had cooled and stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. They sat in adjacent rocking chairs, the porch lantern casting a warm glow around them. Sheriff Wilson is arranging for documents that will officially record your death, Nathan told her quietly. It should prevent your family from continuing their search. Rebecca nodded, her expression thoughtful. So Rebecca Vance truly will cease to exist. You'll need a new name, Nathan agreed, a new identity to go with your new life. Rebecca died by the roadside, she said softly. The woman you found there was already someone else, someone who finally found the courage to escape, to live. She looked at him directly. You gave me that courage, Nathan, he shook his head. The courage was always yours, I just offered a hand up. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the rhythmic creak of the rocking chairs blending with the night sounds of the small town. Mrs. Harmon says there's a position at the school, Rebecca said eventually. Assistant to the teacher, helping with the younger children. I could start once my face heals. That sounds perfect for you. She also mentioned a small house for rent near the school. Once I save enough money, I could have my own place. Her voice held wonder at the possibility. My own home where no one would hurt me. Nathan felt a surge of protectiveness. No one will hurt you again, Rebecca, I promise you that. She studied his face in the lantern light. But you won't be here to see it, will you? You're leaving. The direct question demanded an honest answer. I should, my job is done. Is that all it was? A job? Nathan looked away, unable to meet her searching gaze. You know it wasn't. Then what was it, Nathan? What am I to you? The question hung between them, demanding a truth Nathan wasn't sure he was ready to speak. Before he could formulate an answer, the front door opened and Mrs. Harmon stepped onto the porch. Rebecca, dear, you should rest now. Dr. Jenkins will be by in the morning to check your ribs. Rebecca stood slowly, disappointment evident in her face. Yes, Mrs. Harmon. Good night, Nathan. As she went inside, Mrs. Harmon remained on the porch, her expression unreadable in the dim light. Mr. Xavier, I've prepared a room for you tonight. The hotel is full with a mining convention in town. That's very kind, but it's no trouble, she interrupted firmly. And before you object further, let me speak plainly. That young woman in there has suffered greatly at the hands of men who should have protected her. Yet somehow she trusts you completely. I see it in her eyes when she looks at you. Nathan shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Harmon, I'm not finished, she said crisply. I don't know what's between you two or what you intend, but I will say this: if you're planning to ride away and leave her here alone, have the decency to make a clean break of it. False hope is crueler than honest rejection. With that, she turned and went inside, leaving Nathan alone with thoughts that offered no peace. He spent a restless night in the small but comfortable room Mrs. Harmon had provided, his mind circling the same questions without finding answers. By dawn, he had made his decision. He would speak with Sheriff Wilson, ensure all arrangements were in place for Rebecca's safety and new identity, and then leave Silverton. It was the right thing to do, he told himself. Rebecca needed stability, normalcy, peace, not a rootless bounty hunter with a heart long closed to possibilities. After a silent breakfast where Rebecca was notably absent, Nathan walked to the sheriff's office. Wilson was already at his desk, reviewing wanted posters with his morning coffee. Xavier, he greeted. Just the man I wanted to see. Got word from my contact in the territorial office. He can have the death certificate and burial record created by the end of the week. We'll need a new name for your young lady. She'll choose one, Nathan replied. What about her family? Any sign of them? Wilson shook his head. Nothing yet. But I've alerted my deputies and sent word to neighboring towns. He studied Nathan's face. You look like a man who's made a decision. I have. Once everything's arranged, I'll be moving on. There's a bounty in Wyoming I've been tracking. The sheriff's expression revealed nothing. I see. Well, before you go, there's something you should know. I sent a telegram to the marshal in the district where the Vance ranch is located. Turns out Rebecca's not the first woman in that family to suffer mysterious injuries. Her mother's death 5 years ago had some questioning circumstances. Nathan's attention sharpened. What kind of circumstances? Fall down the stairs was the official cause, but the local doctor had his doubts. Nothing could be proven. Wilson leaned forward. These men aren't just abusers, Xavier. They might be murderers. The information hardened Nathan's resolve. All the more reason to ensure Rebecca's new identity is ironclad. Her family can never find her. Agreed. I'll handle everything from my end. Wilson hesitated. Have you told her you're leaving? Not explicitly. But she knows I don't stay in one place long. The sheriff nodded slowly. Well, good luck to you, Xavier, whatever you decide. Nathan left the office with a growing sense of unease. The news about Rebecca's mother suggested a pattern of violence that went beyond what he'd imagined. These men were even more dangerous than he'd thought. As he walked back toward the boarding house, Nathan noticed a commotion near the general store. A crowd had gathered around 3 riders who had just arrived in town, 3 large men with the dust of hard travel on their clothes and the look of determination in their eyes. Nathan stepped into the shadow of a nearby building, watching as the men dismounted. Even from a distance, he could see the family resemblance: 2 younger men with reddish-brown hair like Rebecca's, and an older man with a distinctive scar down his cheek. They had found Silverton faster than he had anticipated. The men entered the general store, likely asking questions about recent arrivals. Nathan moved quickly, cutting through alleys to reach the sheriff's office. They're here, he announced without preamble. Rebecca's brothers and uncle just rode into town. Wilson cursed, reaching for his gun belt. Sooner than expected, they must have figured out Jenkins' deception quickly. We need to get to Rebecca before they start canvassing the town, Nathan urged. The sheriff nodded. My deputy's at the jail. Tell him to stay put, watch the office. I'll meet you at the boarding house. Nathan moved swiftly through town, avoiding the main street where Rebecca's family was making inquiries. When he reached the boarding house, he found Mrs. Harmon in the garden, picking vegetables for the day's meals. Where's Rebecca? He asked urgently. Mrs. Harmon straightened, alarmed by his tone. Dr. Jenkins came by earlier. He took her to his office to properly set her ribs. What's happened? Her family is in town. They're looking for her. The color drained from Mrs. Harmon's face. Dear God. The doctor's office is just off the main street. I know where it is. Sheriff Wilson is on his way here. When he arrives, tell him where I've gone. Nathan ran toward the doctor's office, his mind racing. If Rebecca's family was systematically questioning businesses on the main street, they would reach the doctor soon. He had to get her away before that happened. Dr. Jenkins' office was in a small white building behind the apothecary. Nathan entered without knocking, startling the elderly doctor who was washing his hands at a basin. Mr. Xavier, what's the meaning of where's Rebecca? Nathan interrupted. Her family is in town. Understanding immediately, the doctor pointed to a door. Examination room. I just finished rebinding her ribs. Nathan knocked quickly, then opened the door. Rebecca was sitting on the edge of an examination table, buttoning the top of her dress. She looked up in surprise. Nathan, what's wrong? We need to go. Now, your brothers and uncle are in town asking questions. Fear washed over her face, but she stood immediately, her movements steadier than they had been days ago. How did they find us so quickly? Doesn't matter. What matters is getting you somewhere safe until Sheriff Wilson can deal with them. Nathan turned to the doctor. Is there a back way out? Dr. Jenkins nodded. Through my living quarters, follow me. He led them through a connecting door into a small apartment behind the office. They moved quickly to the back door, which opened onto an alley. Where should we go? Rebecca asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the danger. Nathan considered their options. The mission storehouse, the brothers will hide you. They moved cautiously through back alleys, avoiding the main streets. Nathan kept Rebecca close, his hand ready on his revolver. They had almost reached the storehouse when shouting erupted from the direction of the main street. That sounds like Sheriff Wilson, Nathan said, recognizing the authoritative voice. From their vantage point in the alley, they could see the confrontation. Wilson stood in the middle of the street, facing Rebecca's family. His deputy flanked him, both men with hands hovering near their weapons. I'm telling you for the last time, Wilson was saying, his voice carrying clearly. The woman you're looking for isn't in Silverton. The scarred man, Uncle Silas, Nathan assumed, stepped forward aggressively. We have reason to believe she's here. A woman matching her description was seen with a bounty hunter heading this way. The only women who arrived in the last week were the Miller sisters from Denver, coming to work at the dress shop, Wilson replied evenly. No one matching your niece's description. You're lying, one of the brothers snarled. We tracked them from Redemption Creek to that old trapper's cabin, then to the mission. Search the town if you don't believe me, Wilson challenged, but you'll do it peacefully or you'll do it from my jail. The tension in the street was palpable. Nathan pulled Rebecca deeper into the shadows of the alley. They won't give up, she whispered. They never do. Nathan made a quick decision. Change of plan. We're going to the livery. We need horses. We're leaving town, Rebecca asked, surprised, just temporarily. Until Wilson can convince them you're not here or run them out of town. Nathan guided her down another alley. There's a line shack about 10 miles outside town where I've stayed before. We can hide there until it's safe. They reached the livery stable without being seen. The stable boy recognized Nathan and quickly saddled 2 horses without asking questions. Within minutes, they were riding out the back way, taking a seldom-used trail that led into the hills behind the town. Are you all right to ride? Nathan asked, concerned about Rebecca's ribs. I'll manage, she assured him, sitting straight in the saddle despite the discomfort it clearly caused her. I've endured worse to escape them. They rode for nearly 2 hours, following a winding trail that climbed steadily into the forested hills surrounding Silverton. The line shack was exactly as Nathan remembered it, a simple one-room structure built for cowboys watching over cattle on summer grazing land. It's not much, he apologized as they dismounted, but it's solid and hidden. It's perfect, Rebecca replied, looking around at the peaceful forest setting. They'll never find us here. Inside, the shack was basic but clean, with a small stove, a table with 2 chairs, and a narrow bunk built into the wall. Nathan started a fire in the stove to take the chill off the mountain air while Rebecca explored their temporary refuge. How long will we need to stay? She asked. A day or 2 at most. Wilson is good at his job. He'll either convince your family you're not in Silverton, or he'll run them out of town. Nathan checked their supplies. We have enough food for a few days. Rebecca sat at the small table, wincing slightly as her ribs protested the movement. It's strange. After running for so long, hiding in fear, I'm almost relieved they found us. At least the waiting and wondering is over. Nathan understood her meaning. The uncertainty can be worse than the danger sometimes. Exactly. She watched him as he prepared a simple meal from their provisions. This changes your plans, doesn't it? He glanced at her. What do you mean? You were going to leave today or tomorrow, I could tell. Her perception startled him again. But now you're here, hiding in the woods with me instead of riding to Wyoming for your next bounty. Nathan continued working, buying time before answering. Your safety comes first, the bounty can wait. And after, when Sheriff Wilson has sent my family away and it's safe to return to town, will you still leave then? The directness of her question demanded equal honesty. Nathan set down the coffee pot and faced her. Rebecca, I'm not the kind of man who stays. I haven't had a proper home in 10 years. The life I lead tracking dangerous men, living on the trail it's no life for. He stopped, unsure how to continue. For a woman, she finished. Or for you? The question struck at the heart of his dilemma. Both, maybe. I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. Rebecca stood, moving closer to him. And what are you, Nathan Xavier? Because from where I stand, you're a man who risked his life to save a stranger. A man who showed kindness when no one else would. A man who sees value in a woman others treated as property. Her words unsettled him deeply. You give me too much credit, and you give yourself too little. Rebecca's green eyes held his, unwavering. I understand if you need to leave. But don't do it because you think you're protecting me, or because you believe you don't deserve happiness. Do it only if it's truly what you want. Nathan found himself unable to respond, the truth of her words stripping away the comfortable lies he'd told himself for years. Before he could gather his thoughts, a sound outside caught his attention, horses approaching. Stay here, he whispered, reaching for his revolver. Get behind the stove, out of sight of the windows. Nathan moved silently to the door, positioning himself to see through a crack without being visible from outside. 3 riders approached slowly, not Rebecca's family, he realized with relief, but Sheriff Wilson and 2 deputies. Xavier, Wilson called. It's Wilson, come out. Nathan opened the door, signaling Rebecca that it was safe. Sheriff, didn't expect to see you up here. Wilson dismounted, his expression grave. Thought you might come to the old line shack, remembered you used it when you were tracking the Carson gang last year. He nodded to Rebecca as she joined them. Miss Vance, glad to see you're safe. What happened in town? Nathan asked. With her family, the sheriff's mouth set in a grim line. They're gone, left about an hour ago. Rebecca's relief was palpable. They believed your story. That I wasn't in Silverton? Not exactly. Wilson removed his hat, running a hand through his graying hair. There was an incident. The older one, your uncle, got belligerent in the saloon, pulled a knife on my deputy. I arrested him, but your brothers broke him out of jail. There was gunfire. Your uncle was killed. Rebecca gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Nathan moved instinctively closer to her, providing silent support. And my brothers? She asked, her voice barely audible. Wounded, but they got away. Rode east, according to my men who tracked them a few miles. Wilson looked genuinely regretful. I'm sorry, Miss Vance, I tried to handle it peacefully. Rebecca sat heavily on a nearby stump, her face pale but composed. You have nothing to apologize for, Sheriff. My uncle was a violent man. He lived by violence and died by it. Nathan knelt beside her. Are you all right? She nodded slowly. I feel nothing, no grief, no joy, just a strange emptiness. She looked up at the sheriff. Are you certain my brothers left town? Positive. They were in no condition to continue searching, and they know I'll arrest them on sight if they return. Wilson replaced his hat. It's safe for you to come back to town now. Mrs. Harmon is worried sick. Rebecca glanced at Nathan before responding. We'll return shortly. I need a moment to process this news. Understanding, Wilson nodded. Of course. I'll head back and let Mrs. Harmon know you're safe. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Xavier, my contact in the territorial office sent this. He handed Nathan an envelope. Official death certificate for Rebecca Vance, plus some blank documentation for her new identity. You'll need to fill in whatever name she chooses. After Wilson and his deputies departed, Nathan and Rebecca sat in silence for several minutes. The news of her uncle's death and her brother's flight had clearly shaken her, though not in the way one might expect from a family loss. How do you feel, truly? Nathan finally asked. Rebecca considered the question carefully. Relieved that Uncle Silas can never hurt anyone again, sad that it came to violence, though not surprised. My family has only ever understood force. She looked up at Nathan. And afraid because my brothers are still out there. They'll heal eventually and they might come looking again. The death certificate will help, Nathan reminded her. Once word spreads that Rebecca Vance is officially dead, they'll have no reason to search. Perhaps. She didn't sound entirely convinced. What happens now, Nathan? He knew she wasn't asking about their immediate return to town, but about the larger question that hung between them, his plans, her future, whether those two things might somehow align. Let's get back to town, he said, not ready to answer the deeper question. You need proper rest, and Mrs. Harmon will be waiting. The ride back to Silverton was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. As they approached town, Rebecca broke the silence. I've been thinking about my new name, she said, my new identity. Have you chosen one? She nodded. Rachel Winters. She glanced at him. Rachel was my mother's name, and winter was her favorite season. She said it was when the world rested and gathered strength for renewal. Rachel Winters, Nathan repeated. It suits you. They returned to the boarding house to find Mrs. Harmon waiting anxiously on the porch. She embraced Rebecca with genuine relief, then ushered them inside for a late lunch and a full account of the events in town. The whole town's talking about it, Mrs. Harmon said as she poured tea. Those men causing such trouble, asking about a young woman no one had seen. When your uncle pulled a knife in the saloon, it confirmed everyone's suspicions about their character. What suspicions? Rebecca asked. That they were the ones who hurt you, dear. Dr. Jenkins might have mentioned your injuries to a few concerned citizens. Mrs. Harmon's expression was unapologetic. This town protects its own. But I'm not its own, Rebecca pointed out. I only arrived yesterday. You are now, Mrs. Harmon stated firmly, especially with your new identity. Sheriff Wilson explained everything to me. She patted Rebecca's hand. Rachel Winters will find a good life here in Silverton. I'll make sure of it. After lunch, Rachel excused herself to rest, the events of the day having exhausted her limited strength. Once she had gone upstairs, Mrs. Harmon fixed Nathan with a penetrating look. Have you made your decision, Mr. Xavier? He knew exactly what she meant. Not yet. Well, don't take too long. That young woman has had enough uncertainty in her life. Mrs. Harmon stood, collecting the tea things. Whatever you decide, be honest with her. She deserves that much. Nathan spent the afternoon walking the streets of Silverton, his mind churning with conflicting thoughts. The town was peaceful again after the morning's excitement, people going about their business as usual. He passed the school where Rachel now, he reminded himself might soon teach, the small house near it that she had mentioned renting, the church where she might worship on Sundays. He could picture her in these places, building the life she had been denied for so long. What he couldn't clearly see was his own place in that picture. By evening, Nathan had reached no definite conclusion, but he knew he owed Rachel an honest conversation. He returned to the boarding house to find her on the porch, watching the sunset from a rocking chair. She looked more at peace than he had seen her since their meeting, her face relaxed in the golden light. "May I join you?" he asked. She smiled, gesturing to the adjacent chair. "I was hoping you would." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the rhythmic creaking of the rocking chairs blending with the evening sounds of the small town. "Sheriff Wilson completed the paperwork this afternoon," Rachel said eventually. Rachel Winters officially exists now, a 24-year-old widow from Colorado, come to Silverton to start fresh after losing her husband. A widow? Nathan raised an eyebrow, a small smile touched her lips. Mrs. Harmon suggested it. Said it would explain my independence and discourage unwanted suitors. Practical woman, Mrs. Harmon. Very. Rachel turned to face him directly. The school board is meeting tomorrow. Mrs. Harmon has arranged for me to meet them about the teaching assistant position. That's good news. It is. She studied his face. You're leaving, aren't you? The direct question deserved a direct answer. I've been thinking about it all day, walking around town, trying to imagine. He trailed off, unsure how to continue. Trying to imagine yourself staying, she finished for him. And you couldn't. Nathan met her gaze. It's not that simple. For 10 years, I've lived with no ties, no responsibilities except to myself. I'm not sure I know how to be anything other than a drifter. I understand, Rachel said softly, better than you might think. I'm learning how to be something other than a victim. It's terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Her perception struck him again. Yes, exactly that. Nathan, she said, her voice gentle but firm, I want you to know something. I will be all right if you leave. I'm stronger than I knew, and Mrs. Harmon has practically adopted me. Silverton can be my home, and I can build a good life here. I know you can, he replied, and he meant it. But she continued, her eyes never leaving his, I would rather build that life with you beside me. Not because I need protection or because I'm afraid to be alone, but because when I'm with you, I feel seen. Truly seen, perhaps for the first time in my life. Her honesty humbled him. Rachel, you don't need to answer now, she interrupted. Take the night to think. In the morning, if you still feel you need to leave, I'll understand. I'll wish you well and be grateful for everything you've done. She stood, wincing slightly at the movement. Good night, Nathan. He watched her go inside, her words echoing in his mind. When I'm with you, I feel seen. The simple truth of her statement resonated within him. Touching something he had buried long ago after Sarah's death, the knowledge that he too needed to be seen, to be known by another soul. Nathan remained on the porch long after darkness fell, his thoughts clearer than they had been in years. By the time he finally went to his room, he had made his decision. Morning brought clear skies and the sound of the town coming to life. Nathan rose early, packed his few belongings, and went downstairs. Mrs. Harmon was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for her boarders. "Good morning, Mr. Xavier," she greeted, noting his packed saddlebags. "I see you've made your decision." "I have," he confirmed. "Is Rachel awake yet?" "She's in the garden. Said she wanted some fresh air before breakfast." Mrs. Harmon studied his face. "Whatever you're planning to tell her, be gentle. That young woman has had enough heartbreak." Nathan found Rachel sitting on a bench beneath an apple tree, her face turned up to the morning sun. She looked peaceful, almost content, though he noticed how her hands tightened on the bench when she heard his approach. "Good morning," he said, remaining standing. Rachel looked at his packed saddlebags and nodded slowly. "Good morning. You're leaving then?" "Yes." Pain flickered across her face before she composed her features. "I understand. Thank you for everything you've done, Nathan. I mean that sincerely. You're welcome. But there's something else." Nathan set down his bags and knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "I'm leaving today, but I'd like your permission to return." Confusion replaced the resignation in her eyes. "Return? I have obligations I need to fulfill. The bounty in Wyoming, some other business in Colorado." Nathan squeezed her hands gently. "But if you're willing, I'd like to come back in a month or so, see how you're settling in. Perhaps stay a bit longer next time." Hope blossomed in Rachel's expression. "You would come back to Silverton?" "To you," Nathan clarified. "If you'll have me." Tears welled in her eyes. "Why?" "What changed your mind?" Nathan considered his answer carefully. "Last night, something you said resonated with me, about feeling seen. The truth is, Rachel, you see me too, the man I am, the man I could be." He smiled ruefully. "It's terrifying and exhilarating all at once." A small laugh escaped her at hearing her own words repeated back to her. "Yes, it is. I can't promise I'll adjust easily to staying in one place," Nathan continued honestly, "but I'd like to try. With you." Rachel reached out, her hand gently touching his face. "I would like that very much." The sound of the breakfast bell interrupted their moment. Rachel stood, wiping away her tears with a smile. "You should eat before you go. Mrs. Harmon's breakfast is the best in 3 counties." They walked back to the house together, a new understanding between them. After a hearty breakfast, Nathan prepared to depart, his horse saddled and waiting at the front gate. "1 month," Rachel confirmed as they stood saying their goodbyes. "You promise?" "I promise." Nathan took her hand, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Be well, Rachel Winters." "I'll be thinking of you." "And I you, Nathan Xavier." She smiled, the first truly unguarded smile he had seen from her. "Be safe." As Nathan rode out of Silverton, he felt lighter than he had in years. The road ahead still called to him, but now there was something equally compelling behind a reason to return, a future to consider. 1 month later, true to his word, Nathan Xavier rode back into Silverton. He found Rachel Winters teaching at the small schoolhouse, just as she had hoped. Her face had healed completely, and she stood straight and confident before her young students. When she saw him in the doorway, her smile outshone the afternoon sun. Nathan stayed in Silverton for 2 weeks that visit, then left again for a short bounty hunt. His returns became more frequent, his departures shorter. By spring of 1876, he had taken a position as deputy to Sheriff Wilson, his skills as a tracker and lawman finally put to use in service of a community rather than for solitary pursuit. That summer, Rachel rented the small house near the school she had spoken of during their first days in Silverton. Nathan helped her move in, building shelves for her growing collection of books and a garden fence to keep out rabbits. On a warm evening in July, as they sat on the porch of her little house watching fireflies rise from the meadow, Nathan asked Rachel to marry him. She accepted without hesitation, her eyes shining with the light of a woman who had found not just safety, but joy. They were married in the town church that autumn with Mrs. Harmon, Sheriff Wilson, and Father Thomas, who traveled from his mission especially for the occasion, in attendance. The town of Silverton embraced them as one of their own, most never knowing the true story of how they came to be there. Years passed. Nathan occasionally took assignments tracking particularly dangerous fugitives, his skills still valued throughout the territory, but he always returned to Silverton, to Rachel, to the life they had built together. Rachel became a full teacher at the school, beloved by generations of children who passed through her classroom. They had 2 children of their own, a son named Thomas, after the priest who had helped them, and a daughter named Sarah, after both Nathan's first wife and Rachel's mother. They raised their children with gentle hands and loving words, breaking the cycle of violence that had marked Rachel's own childhood. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Nathan would watch his wife tending her garden or reading to their children, and marvel at the journey that had brought them together. From that bloodied, broken woman by the roadside to this confident, joyful mother and teacher, Rachel's transformation was a testament to her inner strength, a strength he had recognized even in her darkest hour. And if Rachel sometimes noticed her husband scanning the horizon with watchful eyes, old habits of vigilance never fully abandoned, she understood. They had both been shaped by their pasts but refused to be defined by them. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they stood together on the porch of their home, larger now, with rooms for their growing children and books lining every wall, and looked out at the town that had embraced them. "Are you happy, Nathan?" Rachel asked, her head resting against his shoulder. He considered the question, thinking of the life they had built from the ashes of their separate pains. "More than I ever thought possible," he answered truthfully. Rachel smiled, the last light of day catching the auburn in her hair, now streaked with the first threads of silver. "When you found me that day, you said I'd never go back there. You kept your promise." "We both did," Nathan replied, drawing her closer. "We made something new instead." As night fell over Silverton, the Xavier family went inside their home, closing the door on the darkness. Secure in the warmth they had created together, a bounty hunter who had found his place to belong, and a beaten woman who had risen to become the architect of her own destiny.